Welcome back to JSSkill channel. Today we are gonna deep dive into the React interview questions which are asked in Capgemini company. Let's start. Var vs const vs let. In JavaScript, var, let, and const are used to declare variables. Var. The scope of var is function scope, not block scope. If declared within a function, it is visible throughout the entire function. Hoisting of var. Variables declared with var are hoisted to the top of their scope, which means you can use the variable before it's declared. Reassignment of var. It can be reassigned and redeclared within the same scope. Let. The scope of let. It is block scope, limited to the block statement or expression where it is declared. Hoisting of let. Variables declared with let are hoisted, but they are not initialized. Accessing the variable before declaration results in a reference error. Reassignment of let. It can be reassigned within the same scope, but cannot be redeclared in the same scope. Const. The scope of const is block scope, similar to let, limited to block statement or expression where it is declared. Hoisting of const. Like let, variables declared with const are hoisted but not initialized. Accessing the variables before declaration results in a reference error. Reassignment of const. It cannot be reassigned. It must be assigned a value when declared, and that value cannot be changed. Const vs primitive and non-primitive. Const is a keyword in JavaScript used to declare variables. When a variable is declared with const, its value cannot be reassigned after the initial assignment. It doesn't mean the value itself is constant or immutable. It just means the binding of the variable to the value cannot be changed. When you assign a preemptive value to a variable, the variable holds a copy of that value. Non-primitive types, also known as a reference type, include object, arrays, function, etc. When you assign a non-primitive value to a variable, the variable holds a reference to the actual value stored in the memory. Using const with a primitive types means the variable cannot be reassigned, but the value itself, if mutable, can be modified. Using const with a non-primitive type means the reference memory address held by the variable cannot be changed, but the contents of the object or array, if mutable, can be modified. Shallow copy vs deep copy. A shallow copy creates a new object or array, but it does not create copies of the nested objects or arrays. Instead, it copies references to the original nested objects or arrays. Deep copy. A deep copy creates a new object or array and recursively copies all nested objects and arrays within it. The result is a completely independent copy with no shared references. Map vs filter. Map and filter are both higher order functions in JavaScript that operate on arrays, but they serve different purposes. Let's delve into the distinction between these two array methods. Firstly, map. Purpose. The map method is used for transforming each element of an array based on a provided function. Return value. The map returns a new array with the same length as the original, where each element is the result of applying the provided function to the corresponding element of the original array. And now talk about filter. The purpose of filter is for selecting elements from an array based on a given condition. Return value. Filter returns a new array containing only the element that satisfies the specified condition. The key difference between these two is transformation and selection. Map is used for transforming each element, while filter is used for selecting element based on a condition. In terms of return value, map always returns an array of the same length as the original. With each element transformed, filter returns a new array that may have fewer elements than the original, containing only the elements that meet the specified condition. Let's talk about callback function in these two methods. The callback function passed to map is responsible for generating the transform value for each element. but the callback function passed to filter is responsible for evaluating whether each element should be included in the resulting array. In summary, use map when you want to create a new array by transforming each element, and use filter when you want to create a new array by selecting a specific element based on a condition. These methods are often used together or in combination to perform complex operations on arrays. Prototype. In JavaScript, prototype is a fundamental concept related to object-oriented programming. Every object in JavaScript has a prototype, which serves as a template for the object. The prototype is an object itself, and it contains properties and methods that are shared among all instances created from the same constructor. Advantages of arrow functions. Arrow functions are a concise syntax for writing anonymous function in JavaScript. They were introduced with ES6 and ES6 and have become widely adopted due to their simplicity and some advantages over traditional function expression. Here are the key features and advantages of arrow functions. 1. Conciseness. Arrow functions have a shorter syntax compared to traditional function expression. This makes the code more concise and readable, especially for a small one-line function. 2. Lexical base. One of the most significant advantages of arrow function is that they do not find their own this value. Instead, they inherit the this value from the enclosing scope. This behavior is especially helpful in context in event handler and callbacks, where maintaining the correct this context can be challenging. 3. No arguments binding. Arrow functions do not have their own argument object. Instead, they inherit the argument from the enclosing scope. This can be beneficial in avoiding unexpected behavior in functions that rely on arguments. 4. No new keyword. Arrow function cannot be used and constructed and cannot be invoked with a new keyword to create instances of objects. This helps prevent unintentional error when using arrow function in object-oriented patterns. 5. Implicit return. If the arrow function consists of single expression, it is implicitly returned without using the return keyword. This can make the code more concise. 6. Benefits in React. Arrow functions are commonly used in React components for event handlers and callback functions, where lexical scoping and concise syntax are advantages. In summary, arrow functions offer concise syntax, lexical scoping for this, and other advantages that make them well suited for certain scenarios in modern JavaScript development. However, it's essential to be mindful of their limitations, such as the absence of their own arguments object and the inability to be used as constructor. Bind, call, and apply. In JavaScript, bind, call, and apply are methods that are used to manipulate this value of a function. They are often used in the context of functions that are part of an object or as standalone functions. Let's explore the differences and use cases for each. Bind method. The bind method is used to create new functions with a specific this value and optionally initial arguments. It returns a new function that, when invoked, has its set to be provided value. Call method. The call method is used to invoke a function immediately with a specific this value and individual arguments. It takes the context this value as its first argument and the remaining argument as individual values. Apply method. The apply method is similar to call, but it takes an array or an array-like object as its second argument for passing argument. It takes the context this value as its first argument and an array or an array-like object as its second argument. Use cases. Bind. Used when you want to create a new function with a fixed this value that can be invoked later. Call and apply. Used when you want to invoke a function immediately with a specific this value and argument. Useful in situations where the number of arguments is known beforehand or when arguments are provided as an array. In summary, bind is used to create new functions with a fixed this value, while call and apply are used to immediately invoke a function with a specific this value and argument. This choice between them depends on whether you want to create a new function, bind, or immediately invoke the function with a specific argument, call and apply. Element vs component. An element is a basic unit of DOM or lightweight representation in React, while component is a reusable and encapsulated piece of code that can include elements and other components. Components are a fundamental concept in component-based UI framework, providing a modular and organized approach to building user interface. Pure component. In the context of React, a pure component is a class component provided by React that automatically implements the should component update lifecycle method with a shallow props and state comparison. This optimization can help improve the performance of a React application by preventing unnecessary rendering of components when the props or states have not changed. Here are key characteristics and considerations for pure components. Characteristics. Automatic should component update. Pure components automatically implement the should component update method with a shallow props and state comparison. This means that the component will only render if there are actual changes in the prop or state. Shallow comparison. The shallow comparison involves comparing the previous and current value of props and state using the strict equality operator. It does not perform a deep comparison of complex objects. Class component. Pure components are implemented as class components. They extend the React Pure component class instead of the regular React component class. Performance optimization. Pure components can be useful for performance optimization by reducing unnecessary renders. They are particularly beneficial when dealing with components that have a significant number of children or even optimizing large lists. Shallow comparison limitation. While the automatic shallow comparison can be efficient, it has limitations. It may not be suitable for scenario where a deep comparison is necessary, such as when dealing with complex object or nested data structures. Refs. Refs in React provide a way to interact with and obtain references to element or component instances. It is important to use refs sparingly and consider alternatives when possible, as using refs to directly manipulate the DOM can break some of the declarative nature of React. Refs are typically used for tasks like managing focus, integrating with third-party libraries, or accessing class component instances. Forward ref. In React, forward ref function is a higher-order component that allows component to pass down a ref received from their parent component to a child component. This is particularly useful when you want a parent component to have control over the ref of its child component. The forwarded ref function takes a render function as its argument, and the render function receives two arguments, the props and ref passed to the components. Virtual DOM. The virtual DOM is a concept used in front-end web development frameworks like React to optimize the process of updating the user interface. It is lightweight in memory representation of the actual DOM elements. The virtual DOM helps improve performance by reducing the number of direct manipulations and update the real DOM. Intercept. Intercept generally means to capture or respond to specific points in React component lifecycle or to customize behavior in response to event. This is a fundamental aspect of React's declarative and component-based approach, allowing developers to specify how their UI should behave at different points in its lifecycle. React Fiber. React Fiber is an internal reimplementation of the React reconciliation algorithm, introduced to address performance and responsiveness issues in complex React applications. It is designed to improve the way React handles the rendering, updates, and scheduling of tasks in the component tree. Before React Fiber, the reconciliation process was synchronous and recursive, which could lead to long periods of time where the main thread was blocked, affecting the user experience. With React Fiber, the reconciliation process is made incremental and asynchronous, allowing React to better prioritize and interrupt its work, resulting in a smoother user interaction. Lifecycle method of React. React class components have several lifecycle methods that provide developers with the ability to execute code at different points in the component's lifecycle. These methods can be useful for tasks such as setting up or cleaning up resources, fetching data, or responding to state changes. The lifecycle methods are divided into three main phases. 1. Mounting. These methods are called when the instance of component is being created and inserted into the DOM. Constructor. The constructor is called before a component is mounted. It is used for initializing a state and binding event handler. It receives props as an argument. A static get derived a state from props. This method is invoked right before calling the render method, both on the initial mount and the subsequent update. It returns an object to update the state or null to indicate that the new props do not require any state update. Render. The render method is responsible for rendering the component's UI. It should be a pure function, meaning it should not modify component state or directly interact with the browser. Component did mount. This method is called after the component has been rendered to the DOM. It is often used for performing side effects such as data fetching or interacting with the DOM. Phase 2 is updating. These methods are called when component is being re-rendered as a result of changes to either its props or state. A static get derived state from props. As mentioned earlier, this method is called during both mounting and updating phases. Should component update? This method is called before rendering when the new props or state are being received. It allows the developer to control whether the component should be re-rendered. The default implementation returns true. Render. The render method is called during updating phase as well. Get a snapshot before update. This method is called right before the changes from the virtual DOM are to be reflected in the actual DOM. It enables the component to capture some information from the DOM before it's potentially changed. Component did update. This method is called after the component is updated in the DOM. It is often used for performing side effects related to the update. Unmounting phase. These methods are called when component is being removed from the DOM. Component will unmount. This method is called just before the component is about to be removed from the DOM. It is often used to clean up, such as canceling network requests or cleaning up subscriptions. Additionally, there are error handling method. A static get derived state from error. This method is called when there is an error during rendering, and it allows component to capture the error and update its state accordingly. Component did catch. This method is called after an error has been thrown during rendering. It allows the component to log the error to perform other error handling actions. Keep in mind that with the introduction of React hooks in React 16.8, functional component can also use the use effect and other hooks to achieve similar effect to the lifecycle method in class component. Hooks are a way to use state and side effects in functional component without using classes. When we use wrapped component, higher order components are a pattern in React that involves wrapping a component with a function to enhance its functionality. HOCs allow you to reuse component logic, share code between components, and apply cross-cutting concerns such as logging, authentication, or data fetching. You might consider using HOCs in the following scenarios: code reusability, cross-cutting concern, prop manipulation, conditional rendering, state management, performance optimization. Lazy loading. Lazy loading is a technique used in web development to defer the loading of non-essential resources such as image, script, or components until they are actually needed. This can help improve the initial page load time and reduce the amount of data that need to be fetched before the user interact with the website or application. In the context of web development, lazy loading is commonly used for the following types of resources: 1. Images. 2. Script. 3. Component in web development framework. Lazy loading is particularly beneficial for large and complex web applications where reducing the initial load time is crucial for better user experience. It allows the developer to prioritize the loading of essential resources and defer the loading of non-essential one until they are needed, helping to optimize performance and minimize the amount of data transfer over the network. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this content, consider subscribing and giving it a thumbs up.